School prayers. Everything fell into place, all right. But things dropped so hard the entire world broke. I learned this. My mother's little blue kayaks were perfectly seaworthy. Her Xanax did make me feel not stressed out. They took away my confusion and worry. They made me believe that I only had one head on my shoulders, and that had everything all figured out. Everything is nicely, sweetly normal when you are floating on the kayak. But I would need to take them forever if I wanted things to stay that way. There was only one Xanax left. It was inside the matching clean gray Curtis Crane Lutheran Academy regular boys' socks Robbie carried into the bathroom for me while I was under the shower. I flushed it down the toilet with the last of my vomit. While Robbie showered, I quietly left his apartment at the Del Vista Arms. I counted 3 yellow pay or quit notices taped to doors on Robbie's floor. I walked to Curtis Crane Lutheran Academy alone. I was not late to class. I did not say anything to Robbie. Every morning began with a prayer. Robbie came into class. He was almost tardy for the first time in his life. He was flustered and his cheeks were red. Robbie's tie was crooked and his shirt tail hung down in back of his sweater like he'd been running. He'd obviously been looking for me. Robbie would have to fix his appearance or Pastor Roland Duff would call him in for counseling about proper grooming for Lutheran boys. I prayed with the other students in the classroom, but I only thought about Robbie Breeze and the chain around my neck. I did not talk to Robbie for days after that. I needed to talk to my father. I did not have any idea what I would say. I told Shan I was sick. She thought it was from drinking wine with Robbie the night before. That may have been true. I had no way of figuring out if anything was true or not true on that Tuesday after I spent the night with Robbie. So I told her we would have to go searching for her invisible silo after school on Wednesday. I needed to go home and let Ingrid out, and then go to bed and shit like that, I told her. She had understood. I was already getting too late to do anything about the entire world falling off the cliff that opened at our feet in Grasshopper Jungle. All I could think about was how to pull the how the pull of gravity was screwing with one particular Polish kid from Ealing, Iowa. Shan said, I think you're both hungover. Robbie looks sicker than you. I said. I hope this teaches you something. Shan scolded. So do I said. Tell Robbie to come over tomorrow. Robbie can do whatever he wants. Shan and I walked out of Curtis Crane Lutheran Academy at the end of the day. Robbie had already gone home without saying anything to either of us. What's the matter with you? She asked. I'm not sure, I said. It was the truth. Shan repeated her history lesson for the day. I hope you learned your lesson, is all I can say. I'm sorry, Shan, I said. Then I added, I love you, Shan. Weird. She looked around to see if anyone was paying attention to us. We were alone. She pressed up against me. It was a very daring move for a pair of Lutheran kids, and I shot at the front doors of Curtis Crane. For some reason, the medallion of St. Casimir seemed to get heavy and burn against my bare chest. I thought about Robbie again. She whispered, I love you, Austin. I rubbed my hips into her. She whispered, I love you, Austin. I rubbed my hips into her. I had to say it. Shan, do you think, maybe if I got some condoms? She cut me off. No! Go home, Austin Servo. You're sick. You're not even thinking like a normal boy. I thought that was what normal boys did think about. I tried to prove something, but my experiment failed. Sorry, Shan. Are you sure? She said, can you for one moment stop being silly, Austin? She said moment again. I was so horny and scared and so confused about everything. I will, I said. I need to go lie down, I'm sorry. I was not thinking like a normal boy. What was I going to do? The vice president's balls. Some nights my mother stayed at work at the Hy-Vee until late, so my dad and I would have to prepare dinner for ourselves. There was one time when it was against the law in Iowa for women to allow boys and dads to cook dinner for themselves. Now kids like Robbie Breeze and me often had to survive on our own wits and eating shit like cup of noodles and Doritos. Most of all, I wanted to go to bed and mope, but that evening I cooked fish sticks and frozen French fries for my dad. I waited for him to come home from school so we could talk. The fish in the sticks claimed to be from Alaska. The fries were not from France. The package said they were grown in Oregon and Idaho. If there's one thing America can do well, it's freeze shit. I waited. I was nearly asleep with my head on the table when my father came in. You stayed up too late with Robbie last night, didn't you? My father, whose name was Eric, said. I answered. I picked up my head and rubbed my eyes. I was still wearing my Lutheran boy tie and sweater. For the first time I realized I'd left my sleeping bag, underwear, socks, toothbrush, sneakers, and cell phone in Robbie's bedroom. At least I had the foresight to stuff my history notebooks into my Lutheran boys' school backpack. Yes, I said, I think I'm not feeling well, Ben. My father sat at the table and began eating. I got up and went to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of ketchup. My dad was a ketchup man, not me. The ketchup was made in Nebraska, so they do something there after all. I watched him. He ate. I was getting ready to say something. I just needed to know what words to start with. My dad said, "Is something wrong, Austin?" I said, I was determined to do it. I said, Dad, when you were about my age, did you ever, experience it? Did you ever have guy friends who, did you experiment with it was a mess. That is exactly how it came out. My father stopped chewing. Fish sticks are not things that require any degree of jaw strength. I wished my brother Eric was still at home. He had been gone so long that it was as though I were an only child. Having a brother there would help. Eric was someone I could have talked to about things like erections and sex and making mistakes and accidental spills and being confused and all that kind of shit. At exactly that moment, Eric Christopher Zerba was in a morphine-induced coma. As I sat there nervously watching my father, there was a small earthquake in Guatemala. Robert Breeze Sr. was sleeping naked in a queen-size bed with his new Guatemalan wife. Her name was Greta. Robert Breeze Sr.'s 2-year-old son, whose name was Hector, was lying on Robert's chest. In the sky above them, hot ash from a volcano named Huacamochli began billowing soundlessly into the atmosphere. At that precise moment, there were 3 bugs in Ealing, Iowa. Hungry Jack, Travis Pope, and Travis's wife Eileen. They all wanted to do only 2 things. The 4 Hoover boys had not yet hatched. They were sick. Young people don't break down as fast. Robbie Breeze was lying in his bed at the Del Vista Arms luxury apartments. He was wearing my t-shirt and boxers that I'd taken off and dropped in his bathroom floor. Robbie was listening to the Rolling Stones. Shan Collin was writing in a diary she kept locked in the nightstand beside her bed. She theorized how she might get away with her wish to have sex with her boyfriend, who sensitively promised her he would use a condom. When my father and mother did learn about what happened to Eric, they left Iowa and flew to the military hospital in Germany where my brother was undergoing treatment. At first, they tried to arrange for me to stay at the Del Vista Arms with Robbie and his mother. I begged for them to leave me at home alone because I was old enough and somebody needed to get Ingrid out to shit after all. It was really only that I was afraid to face Robbie Breeze. I knew that I would have to face him eventually, but I did not want to do it yet. My parents would not take me with them. They said I should stay in school and they would call me twice per day. When Eric Christopher Zerba was recovering from his wounds, the Vice President of the United States came to the hospital and visited him. The Vice President was from Delaware. I never knew anyone who'd been to Delaware. The Vice President of the United States of America took a shit that day in the men's toilet at the cafeteria at the military hospital before visiting my brother's room. The Vice President of the United States had 2 testicles that he liked very much, and neither one of his legs had been blown off. When the Vice President of the United States was a teenager, he also experimented. My father stopped chewing and stared at me. I could see in his eyes that he knew exactly what I was trying to talk about. There's a certain dark and faraway look that fathers get in their eyes when their sons uncomfortably venture towards asking them questions about their penises and shit like that. I could see that look right away. He said, "You mean like in chemistry class?" I said. For the last few days in chemistry class at Curtis Crane Lutheran Academy, we'd been making a slippery, gooey, milky white polymer from borax and some other shit. A polymer is something that is heavy and thick, made up of lots of small molecules. The word polymer came from Greece. The Greeks were good at making up words for shit. Robbie Breeze was my partner in lab. Robbie said the polymer we made in chemistry class looked and felt exactly like sperm. Everyone else in the class also thought it was exactly like sperm. Well, actually, not everyone. Only the physically and spiritually weak boys who masturbated thought our polymer looked and felt exactly like sperm. That was every boy in the class, considering we were all in 10th grade and 15 or 16 years old, which made all us boys physically and spiritually weak masturbators who could never be relied on to effectively defend the United States against foreign invasions. Only a couple of the girls thought our borax polymer looked and felt exactly like sperm. Shan did. But she sat beside me during that awkward eruption at Eden 5 needs you 4. Mr. Dwayne Coventry, our chemistry teacher, got mad and embarrassed by the behavior of the boys in the class. He obviously thought the stuff was exactly like sperm too. So Mr. Dwayne Coventry brought in small vials of blue food coloring and made us tint our borax and polymer sperm experiments so they wouldn't look so much like sperm. Yeah, Dad. In chemistry, I said. I once made a battery with a lemon, my father said. I did that too, Dad. Everyone does that shit when they're kids. My father swabbed his Alaska fish stick through his puddle of Nebraska ketchup. Yes, Austin. I did do experiments when I was your age. He said it with finality and relief. That was the end of the history lesson about my dad and what he did when he was a teenager. Thanks, Dad. Well, good night. Good night, son, my father said. I went to bed. I realized that it was the last time in my life I would ever attempt to speak to my father about sperm, or about my sexual curiosity and confused feelings. I'd be just as well served watching daytime television programs for women, or speaking to Ollie Jungfrau about those kinds of things. Or to any complete stranger sitting on a bus, for that matter. In the morning, the chaos before school, my parents were up and speaking with 2 liaison officers in the kitchen when I came downstairs. That was the day they left Ealing to go to Germany and see my brother Eric, who no longer had any balls. My mother and father both agreed it would be all right if I stayed in bed that day. So I did not go to school.